My name is Singgih. I'm a journalism major with an emphasis in writing and publishing. Today I present to you how Christian film criticism can bring light to a dark industry. So before I get into the bulk of my presentation, you should know that I love movies. I'm a huge movie fan. I could talk to anyone for hours and hours about your favorite movies or about my favorite movies. We could talk to you about how I think Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is the greatest Spider-Man of all time. We could talk about where the current state of art house cinema is right now. We could talk about how Disney's unruly ascent into a monopoly is ultimately bad for the film industry. I could talk about movies for hours and hours. That's because I love them so much. I love how immersive they are. I love how sometimes you can watch a movie and experience new worlds. I love how you can fight sci-fi space battles or journey along fantasy underworlds. I love when movies bring you along to an adventure to see something new. Conversely, I also love when movies are relatable. I love when I can look up on screen and say, hey, that looks like me. That character acts like me. That character speaks like me. That character has seen the same experiences that I have. They've seen the same joy, the same pain, the same sorrow. I love when films are relatable. When I first transferred into the journalism program, I had one aspiration in mind. I wanted to be a film critic. I wanted to use all my love and all my passion for film and transfer that so I could be like the next Gene Siskel, the next Roger Ebert, or the next Justin Chang from the LA Times. And when I first came to Biola, that's what I did. I really focused on just being a film critic. I freelanced film reviews for the Chimes. I freelanced for an online publication called the Film School Rejects, now of which I have an internship with. I had my eyes set on being a film critic. But as I've traversed the journalism program for the last few years, I've really come to fall in love with all journalism. I've really come to understand the importance of how local news is vital to our democracy. I've really come to understand how feature stories can relay passion and emotion and love, and how that can change us, and how that can force us to change. I've even come to love podcasting and photography. As I've been going through this journalism program, what I realized about myself is that I'm a storyteller. And all of a sudden, film criticism became superficial, because film criticism is writing about other people's stories. But I still had this deep love for film. I still had this deep passion for film. So how could I tell stories about other people's stories? Well, as I've been so blessed to be here at Biola, to be at the Bible Institute of Los Angeles, where we're taught to think biblically about everything, where we're taught to use theology practically, I've come to develop Christian film criticism. And Christian film criticism is more than just criticism, film criticism. Film criticism is traditional film criticism really just tells you whether a movie was good or bad, whether the acting was genuine or fake, whether the story was convincing or not. But I think Christian film criticism can draw out themes of theology, philosophy, and even messages of Jesus in a secular world. There's no denying the influence that film has in our lives. At a young age, we show children television programs like Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers because we know that they will help shape an ethical framework within them. The top movies make hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars at the box office, so wouldn't it be worthwhile to shed a Christian perspective on these films? Wouldn't it be worthwhile to talk about how Christopher Nolan's Interstellar reflects how Jesus' love transcends through space and time? Wouldn't it be worthwhile to talk about how Daredevil's crisis of faith is so reflective of our crises of faith? I think that it's important that I, as a Christian film critic, talk about films in a way that brings out Jesus. Now, I know there's a ton of research on God in film or God in television, and there's even a class here called Faith in Film. But what separates research papers and college classes from journalism and criticism is that journalism has a wider outlet to reach a mainstream audience. When research papers are compiling the best movies or the most obvious movies that talk about God, they're leaving out the movies that are being released every day or every week. Traditional film critics review every movie. They don't just pick the movies that they want to review, they review every movie. And I think Christian film critics should review every movie as well. I think I, as a Christian film critic, should review every movie as well. So how would I be able to do this? Well, through the journalism department here, I've developed crucial skills of articulation and analysis. The Bible program has taught me how to find God and how to understand how he moves in this world. As the arts and entertainment editor at the Chimes, I've been able to practice my skills, refine my skills, practice writing about God in entertainment. As I mentioned earlier, I'm an intern for filmschoolrejects.com. Film School Rejects is an online film and entertainment publication that garners over 150,000 clicks per day. They have over 400,000 followers on Twitter. And yes, they are a secular publication, but I've gotten away with writing about some Christian themes in some of my articles. Now, I just learned this morning that I've reached over 110,000 views over all my articles, which may not seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but to me, that means 110,000 people have had the opportunity to maybe read about where God is in movies. Now, I don't do this type of writing all the time, because that's just not where all of my content is. But let me give you an example of what I mean by Christian film criticism. So earlier this year, I was able to go to the Los Angeles Film Festival as a member of the press, as a member of the critic, as a critic. And I saw this movie called The Clove Hitch Killer. And The Clove Hitch Killer is a really intense movie. It's about a young teenager who finds out that his father is a serial killer and a serial rapist. It's an intense movie, and I would recommend you see it if you can stomach the content. But for me, it was more than just a beautiful showcase of acting. It was more than just a beautiful showcase of thrilling drama. For me, this movie brought out reflections of how Christian legalism, Christian fundamentalism, and sexual repression have in birthing tragedy. For me, this movie taught me about how legalism has shaped some of my life, how it's hurt some of my life, how it's hurt the people and how it's hurt the other people in my life. It brought reflections on how the Catholic Church's sexual abuse scandal came about. Now, this article has been tweeted by IFC Midnight, who is the distributor of this film. It's also been quoted in the official trailer for this film. So my hope is that people that go watch this movie will read this review and start thinking about the role that legalism has in their lives. How can legalism control you? How can legalism shape you? Another example that I have comes from my work in the Chimes. I did a review on a movie called Annihilation last year, which is an intense movie. It's a sci-fi thriller. It is so good. Definitely go see it if you can. But apart from being a dazzling showcase of CGI and visceral acting from Natalie Portman, it also reminded me of where I need a savior, of where I need God. Because in the movie, Natalie Portman's character seemingly goes on a suicidal mission towards destructive tendencies into this weird alien realm. And that brought me to how sometimes I go self-destructive, how sometimes I need God to bring me back up and to make me whole again. I believe that I know good film. I know good film criticism. And I know how to apply theology practically in my life. So I believe that I can bridge the gap between theology and film to relay to the audience where Jesus is in certain moments. Film is a medium that should be thought deeply upon. And yes, people think about it deeply, but hardly ever do we think about it from a theological standpoint. I think as a film critic, I can bring people to read weekly pieces about the movies that are coming out that are applicable to them. How can I get you to think about Jesus? How can I get you to think about Jesus' role in your life? This is just a glimpse of what I want to do in the future. My name is Singgih. I'm a Christian film critic, and I believe I can make a difference. Thank you so much for listening.